Hi everyone, it's Kelly from Kellie's Bead Boutique. So today we're going to mix up our metals. So sometimes I've been making a piece and I've accidentally put in the wrong color, but you know what? I end up liking it. So I thought, well, let's purposely do it today. So I'm going to show you how to make 2 pairs of earrings where we're mixing the colors of the metals, which just helps add a little bit of interest. So if you want to see what I'm making, come and join me. Okay, so to make these earrings today, I have a couple of these. They're not new to Tiara Cast, but they're new to me. I just caught these the other day, these little sort of decorative tabs, and I thought they were so gorgeous, I knew I had to use them right away. So we've got a pair of those, and those are in the antique brass. And also in antique brass, we have a couple of these sort of ropey looking rings. And I also have some of these little teeny tiny Tiara Cast bead caps that I love to use so much. They're just really little, but they add just that little bit of extra. And we're also going to be using some 22 gauge titanium wire, so that's our mixed metal look. And we're also going to be using some basically the same kind of a color. They call it gray, but it's a titanium sort of color ear wire. So there's our mixed metal look. And I've got a couple little 4mm round beads. Those are check glass. I also have for tools, I've got my cutter, I've got a pair of chain nose pliers, bent chain nose pliers, and some round nose pliers. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut myself a little bit of wire. Now I'm really bad. I know I'm wasteful because I always cut more than I need. So you guys, if you ever order kits, you will always get enough wire. So I don't know. I just find it easier to work with a little more than a little less. And I hate running out in the middle of a project. So the first thing I'm going to do is take my pliers and put it at the top, and I just kind of straighten that out a bit. Let me get rid of some of these pliers out of the way. Okay, so about 2 inches from the top, I'm going to take my pliers and place them on there and using my thumb, and I like to use my thumb because that's the strongest part of my hand. So I'm going to push away because I want to make a nice sharp angle there. So now I'm going to take my round nose pliers and I'm going to place them about 1/3 of the way up. I don't want to have a super big loop on here, but it needs to be big enough that we can get through the little hole there. So I'm going to take the wire from the back and go up and over and down. And now I'm going to open my pliers and I'm just going to rotate them. And then I'm going to take that little tail that's now in the front and pull it straight to the back. So that creates a nice little loop. And if you have to kind of bend it over to make it sort of more like a little sort of stop sign there, that's what you want to do. Now we're going to take that wire and pop it through your little tab here. Now these are decorative on both sides, so you can choose whichever side you like. One's a little more sort of viney looking and the other's a little bit more sort of floral looking, I suppose. So now what I do is I usually get it to here and then I just take my fingernail and kind of pry that open so that you're not changing the shape of the loop there. If you try and just pull it through, it's not a super heavy gauge, so it will just distort that. So just kind of pry it open with your finger. Now I'm going to take my pliers and go straight across the middle of that loop. I want to make sure that I have right across the loop and not just a little bit here, because again, when you go to wrap, you're going to distort the shape of the loop. So get a good hand grip on that. Now I like to use my bent chain nose pliers to wrap. So I'm going to do sort of a bulky wrap on this one. So I'm going to go around once and twice, and then I'm going to work my way back up. So again, this doesn't have to be perfect because it's going to have that sort of, bulky, messy kind of look. So I'm going to go like 2 down and 2 or 3 up, and you can see how that just kind of creates a nice little bulkier looking wrap. So now we're going to use the flush side, and we're going to come in and just kind of tweak that little bit there. Cut that off, and now you will have just a tiny little burr right there. And I don't want to flatten this too hard because it will really distort this little bit of wire we've got here. So I'm just going to take the very tip of my pliers and put it on the end and just gently kind of smush it down. And that kind of went crazy. Sometimes it'll go a little awry on you, but it actually looks perfectly fine. So now we have our little wrap there. So now I'm going to place on one of my teeny tiny little bead caps, and again, I love these because they're just little mini, but they just add that little bit of extra. When you're making jewelry, sometimes it's not about adding a whole pile of stuff, but it's about making something look just a little extra when you're creating. And see how cute that looks? I just love that little bit in there. So now I want to have another loop, but I don't want to have a neck on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take it and hold it in my hands this way so I've got a good grip on it, and I'm just going to bend the wire right at the neck there of the top there, so I'm not creating an extra neck. Now I'm going to go about halfway up because I need just a little bit bigger loop, and I'm going to do the same process. So I'm going to go up and over and straight down, open my pliers, and then rotate them so they're now parallel with the table. And then I'm going to take that and pull that to the back. And now you can see that this loop is way over to the left there. And that's just kind of what happens when you do these sort of no neck loops. So now all I'm doing is I'm taking my, this is sort of a version of what I'm doing. I'm going like this, but I'm doing it very gently and sort of subtle until I get it where I want. So see how that just kind of realigned that? And then I just take that little arm and bring it down. And now we have a loop right on top of there. So now I'm going to take one of our little sort of ropey rings here. And again, I just kind of pop it open with my fingernail. And then I'm going to come in over top. Make sure you go right across there. Now this is long enough that I don't need to use my pliers. So I'm going to wrap down a couple times and go back up 2 or 3 times. And the nice thing about doing these sort of bulky, messy wraps is that you can hide a world of sin. So if your wraps haven't been very good, you can hide them all, which is really nice. So again, using the flush side of the cutters, I am going to just come in and trim that off. And then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and find that little burr and just sort of tuck it down gently. And again, I'm not pushing very hard, just enough to sort of get it out of the way. Yeah, you will find on this one, because we're using a thinner gauge wire, that it will be a little bit misshapen. What I find that I have to do is go in and kind of start tweaking it a little bit. So I just sort of gently move it around. I'm not really squishing with my pliers. I'm sort of holding my pliers and just sort of, I'm more pushing the bead around and the wire versus using the pliers to manipulate the wire. Does that make any sense? I just don't want to create any stress on the wire, but I do want a little bit more of a straight look. Now I'm going to take my ear wire and I'm going to go across just like you would on a jump ring, and I'm going to bend like that, and then I'm going to decide which side that I want, and I want this side to be facing out. So I'm going to pop it in that way, and I'm going to do that up nice and tight. So now I'm just going to make the second one off camera, and I'll be right back. Okay, so there's our first little pair of mixed metal earrings, and it's just a real subtle little difference. Just we've got that little bit of the gray mixed with the antique brass, and I like just that little bit of a variance there. I think it adds just a little bit of interest. So let's get on to pair number 2. Okay, so for pair number 2, we're going to be using a very similar kind of technique and some sort of similar looking parts, but we'll have a completely different look when we're done. So I've got our 22 gauge titanium wire, and then we're going to be mixing it with the antique brass again. So I've got antique brass ear wires. I've got some of the little bead caps again, but these ones are in antique silver this time. I have a couple pieces of check rondelles. I have these little ethnic darts from Tierra Cast, and then these little sort of triangles in antique brass. And we have our 4 basic tools again. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut myself some wire, and then, it's about 6 inches of wire, I suppose. And again, I'm going to take my pliers and I'm going to just sort of straighten that out. So I'm going to go a couple inches down, and I'm going to bend away, and I'm going to create a little bit of a loop here. And I want to go not quite halfway, but a little bit above a third of the way up. And up and over and down, open my pliers, rotate it, and then pull that little tail to the back. And then I just kind of straighten it out. Now I'm going to pick up one of these little ethnic dart charms, and I'm going to just sort of pry that open and pop that in. And then I'm going to take one of these little brass triangles and pop that in. And we're going to do the same kind of a wrap in that I want to get right across the loops there. And sometimes it's a little hard when you've got all these charms and things like that, but you just want to make sure you've got a good grip on that. So now we're going to wrap around once and twice, and then we're going to work our way back. And I left this one a little bit longer so it's a bit easier to wrap. And you want to make sure that when you're cutting your wire that you end in the back. So I want to bring this one around one more time. So I'm going to kind of be careful, and because I can't get in there. Well, maybe I can. You just sort of have to boss the wire around, but I want to end in the back there. So I'm just going to have a look at it, and I can see that my wire is in the front. So I'm just sort of with my fingers molding it around the back. Now the reason I added that extra is because I wanted just a little bulkier look there. I didn't want to see so much of the loop. So I'm just pulling that around to the back with my fingers, because this wire is super soft and it's really easy to mold with your fingers. So now I'm going to cut it with my flush side of my cutters. So just come in nice and close, and always grab that wire because it'll go flying all over the place if you don't. And then I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and just come in on the top and give it just a little tiny smush on that burr. Now, one of the things that I know when I teach classes, often people have a hard time getting that burr down, and it's because they've turned it this way. And physically, there's really no way of getting that in there properly if you're going upside down. It wants to just pull this way. So always make sure, this is what I tell everybody when I teach a class, is to see that that burr is coming towards you. So I can see it coming around the wire, like pretend my finger is the wire. So it's coming around like that. So I can see it this way, and then I can just take the tip of my tool and go right at the very, very end and give it a little smush, and it just kind of naturally wants to push down. So there's a little tip for you for today. Move some of these tools. So now you can see how that looks on top there, and I love the way that these just fit on there so perfectly, and I love the difference between the color of the antique brass and the antique silver there. I think it looks really, really cute. Okay, so now we're going to use some of the same parts again. So I've got my bead cap, and I've got one of my check glass rondelles and another bead cap. So now I want to make a loop, but I'm going to do it differently than I did on the last one. So the last one I went in the same direction. This one I want to go in opposite directions, just because I'm going to be attaching an ear wire directly to it. So I'm going to bend away, and you know, you sort of have to just get a good grip on it and then bend sharply like that, because you just don't want to have a neck on there. And you can just kind of straighten out your wire if it gets a little bit bent. So now I'm going to come in and go about a third of the way up, go up and over and down, rotate my pliers, bring that to the back, and again now you can see it's way, way, way over there. So I just have to just rotate it around until it's sitting straight on top. So now you can see that that loop is sitting straight on top of our little grouping of beads there. Now I'm going to come in with my pliers and place it right on top there, and I'm going to do a couple wraps down and then a couple wraps up. And if you are not perfect at wrapping your loops, these are the perfect thing for you, because you don't have to be perfect at all. Okay, so there's no have to, like, well, she said to go 4 times or 3 times, doesn't matter. You just want to wrap until you're happy. Okay, so just trim that off, and again I'm going to have my little burr coming around the wire and facing me. And then now, just like the last one, because it's a little bit like it's not, I didn't want to use a heavy gauge because I didn't want a bulky wrap in my ear. I just don't like that look sometimes. So now you can see it's a little misshapen, so I'm just going to sort of reshape it with my fingers. And then on this one, now you can see that the loop got sort of twisted there, so I'm going to get a good grip on it and just turn it the way that I want. So there we go. So you just kind of have to understand that wire is really bendy. That's the whole point of it, is that it's really bendable. So you can kind of just manipulate it and do what you like with it. So now I'm going to put my ear wire on, and on this one I'm using the one that has like a little ball on the end of it. So I want to actually take my pliers and just, I'm not going to squish hard because I don't want to misshape that earring, but I want to take it and push the ball towards the back so that it closes up and we don't lose our earring. So I'm just going to make the second one off of camera, and then I'll be right back. So there you go, there's our completed pair of earrings. So I really like the little bit of a contrast between the antique silver and the antique brass. I think it just kind of brings the earrings to life. I used very similar parts and the similar techniques, and yet we have 2 completely different pairs of earrings. These will both be available in kit form, so just go to the drop down menu and you can go directly to my website. It's a totally secure website, and you can place your order there. I hope you enjoyed this one. If you did, please make sure to give me a thumbs up, and please leave me a comment. Tell me which pair is your favorite. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please make sure that you do so. It really does help my channel out. I want to thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. And I'm rambling because I never know what to say on this stupid thing. I hate doing these intros. Oh my God, why is this so hard? A couple diddle? Yeah, let's diddle. Yeah. Okay, I'm never going to be able to stop laughing now. It's too early for this stuff. Should we go take one? Or take 92? Uh,